Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back once again to the OR News broadcast. It is 6 o'clock, and that means it's time for our English News edition, which we have Monday through Saturday at 6 p.m. As usual, I'm Daniel Cook, your host, presenting a translated version of today's news stories. The prime ministers of the southeastern Balkans participated in the Vienna Economic Forum in Tirana today. All of them conveyed the message that the future of the Balkans lies in EU integration. They pointed out that good relations between the region's countries and joint infrastructure projects will accelerate this important process. With one voice, the prime ministers of the region urged the EU to open its doors to the Balkan countries and to help finance the joint projects. It seems as though the Vienna Economic Forum helped the prime ministers of Serbia and Kosovo to come together on common ground. The two were seen shaking hands at the summit. The Serbian prime minister spoke about this later during his speech, saying, "It was good to shake hands and to improve the relations between us." The regional countries that attended the forum asked the EU to stop holding seminars and forums and to start providing the funds for the projects that will help the region draw closer to full integration. Prime Minister Rama said, "Infrastructure and a common investment strategy are the pillars that our cooperation will be built upon. We are being asked to challenge ourselves, but I think that it's time for Europe to challenge itself and to view us differently." The Serbian Prime Minister was even more direct in his speech. He said, "The EU's support for Serbia has decreased. Maybe it's about the enlargement fatigue that Prime Minister Rama mentioned before. We should draw closer together to determine what we all need from the EU. We need money. We are tired of the seminars. We need money to implement the necessary projects. We need to ask them, can they give us this money? If not, please tell us, because we will have to find the money for our projects elsewhere. Our people want concrete results," he said. Montenegro's prime minister made the statement that the current lack of stability is causing a lack of regional development. "It is clear that there are some unsolved issues from the past," he said. "These issues need EU attention. The recent events in Kumanov, the Serbia-Kosovo dialogue, and the situation in Bosnia, they need more attention. We should be clear that the lack of stability has been created over centuries, and this causes the lack of development in the region." The Prime Minister of Macedonia also spoke about the issue. "Good neighborly relations between the countries of the region are important, and joint economic projects can make progress only through the cooperation. We should all be prudent with the declarations we make, because the citizens follow these messages, and every message that is not properly conveyed can create negative feelings which are very difficult to remove. Then it becomes difficult to remove these feelings," said Prime Minister Gruevski. The Prime Minister Mustafa from Kosovo said that the problems between his country and Serbia can only be resolved through dialogue. The cooperation process that was initiated in Berlin will continue on August 27th in Vienna, he said. The countries of the Balkans promised to present concrete projects there, but instead we are awaiting concrete help, said Mr. Mustafa. The Prime Minister of Kosovo, Isa Mustafa, held a meeting today with the Prime Minister of Macedonia, Nikola Gruevski. In the head-to-head dialogue, the two ministers discussed the recent events in Kumanov, in which 9 Kosovar citizens lost their lives. After the meeting, Mr. Mustafa made the statement that an international investigation into the events is desperately needed, as well as cooperation to ensure that these events never occur again. The Vienna Economic Forum brought all the prime ministers to the same place and gave them the opportunity to hold one-on-one meetings with their counterparts. The Albanian Prime Minister also held a meeting with Mr. Gruevski, in which they exchanged viewpoints on the bilateral cooperation and EU membership. The Democratic Party chairman Lulzim Basha was invited to be a guest last night on the OR News program Tonight Il Vettore. Mr. Basha implied that the opposition does not intend to boycott the local elections. He said, "This idea is being promoted by the majority, but we are not going to abandon the citizens. We will be with them in the June 21st elections, which will be a chance to stop the bad governance, to stop the economic crisis, and the growth of unemployment. Our offer is to reduce the taxes and the oil and energy prices," said the Democratic chairman. Mr. Basha also said that by selecting Erion Valiai, Edi Rama hopes to take the municipality under his own control. He expressed his expectation to win the local elections throughout the country, and especially here in Tirana. He commented on the resignation of the Democratic candidate for Kurbin from the elections. According to Basha, he left the race because of pressure from the majority. Altin Biba withdrew because of criminal pressure from the left-wing candidate. He said, "We expect a decision from the Electoral College on this issue. I have gathered complete information for every candidate, and none of them were selected without first presenting their information." Basha made the public claim that there are no candidates with criminal records running for the Democratic Party, and he was very clear about upholding the electoral standards. Edi Rama and Ilir Meta will be held responsible if they try to violate the standards of the elections, he said. "I assure you that no one will be allowed to manipulate the free vote. The time of manipulating and purchasing votes is over," said Mr. Basha. It seems that the new justice reform may bring big changes in Albania's constitution. In today's meeting on the reform, the Minister of Justice, Nasip Nacho, spoke about this proposal to change the segregation of duties in the justice system. Sitting next to the President of Albania, the minister declared that the President should no longer be the head of the High Council of Justice, and that all his competences should be given to the leader of the High Court. President Nishani made the following comments in response. "The writers of the Constitution have made it this way in order to make the justice system independent from legislative or executive interference. But in a democratic society, the relations between the political and judicial authorities often create problems and clashes. Furthermore, they create conflicts in a society that is in transition or just beginning its democratic process," said President Nishani. According to Nishani, the country is in the important process of making reforms that require the commitment of all parties. The head of the EU delegation to Albania was also present in the meeting. He said that the independence of the judiciary ought to be guaranteed, as it is the key to the justice reform. Instat has published its latest report on Albania's foreign trade for April of 2015. The report indicates that the exports to the EU countries have decreased by a massive 25.3% compared to just a year ago. The report points out that exports to Kosovo and China have also decreased compared to a year ago at 13.4% and 4% respectively. Exports to Turkey decreased by 2.7%. According to Instat, the total exports for April reached the amount of 20 billion lek, which is a 10% decrease compared to April of 2014. This decline of exports was primarily impacted by a decrease of mineral fuel sales, energy sales, and poor performance of textiles. The export of fuel is estimated to have dropped by 28% in the first quarter. Meanwhile, building materials and machinery has had a positive impact. This decrease of exports has increased the national deficit by 6.5% compared to April of 2014 and 3.3% compared to March of 2015. The largest share of exports to the EU countries is occupied by Italy at 67.9%, Spain at 6.3%, and Greece at 5.6% of total exports. The imports from the EU countries have increased by 3.7% compared with April of 2014. The opposition asked today for the resignation of the Minister of Health, Ilir Becaj, blaming him for fraud scheme involving false prescriptions. Through the MP Albana Vokshi, the Democrats asked the health minister to resign from his post, accusing him of stealing 1.5 billion lek in the medical fraud scheme. Minister Becaj defended himself by saying that his ministry discovered the fraud and that the prosecution is now investigating the case. He added that the scheme originated during the time that Sali Berisha was ruling the country, pointing the finger at the Democratic candidate for Tirana, who at that time was the Minister of Health. Today's plenary session was also focused on the electoral campaign, and the opposition accused the Assembly Speaker of pressuring the Democratic candidate for Vora. Mr. Meta rejected these accusations and expressed his readiness for an investigation into the case. That concludes our news for this evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us. Please be with us again tomorrow at the same time for more translated news in English. Have a great night.